And if you're in iTunes, please leave a rating and a review. It will help us out tremendously. We're also on DAB, Online Digital Radio. You can check us out at the Sportscast app for iPhone, or you could go to the sportscast.net website and follow us on Twitter at the Sportscast1 for the latest and breaking news, which we do have right now. Nick Saban has tested positive for COVID-19. And we'll be talking to that later in the show. But first, we'll talk about Le'Veon Bell from the New York Jets. Got released last night. Got cut last night by the New York Jets. And today we had Nick Rossetti, our Sportscast contributor, and Matt O'Leary, a Jets personality on YouTube. Welcome to the Sportscast, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Nick, welcome.
Yeah, excited as well. Thanks so much, and really stoked to talk to Matt.
Well, Matt, the late breaking news last night, Le'Veon Bell, a man that averaged 3 yards per game for the Jets, got cut last night. A lot of drama going on with the Jets, not just Le'Veon, but also Adam Gase. Matt, tell us what happened last night.
Yeah, so it's been pretty well known that Adam Gase did not want Le'Veon Bell. He was not a fan of him getting that contract from then general manager Mike McCagnon. Le'Veon wasn't really utilized properly last year. His numbers were way down. It wasn't really injury or him being banged up. I truly believe that he just wasn't being utilized to his fullest strength. And then this year he's played in 2 games with the Jets and more of the same. Like this past week, he had 13 carries and just 1 target in the passing game. And I think just tensions finally boiled over. They tried to move him, but I don't think anyone was willing to bite on that contract, and they decided to cut him. That seems to be, how everything decided to go down.
Yeah, Matt, one thing I wanted to ask you about, and before I even ask you a question, I want to read something that I came across that just blew my mind. So throughout Le'Veon Bell's tenure, $27 million earned, 17 games played. 0 rushes of 20-plus yards. 0. Out of 264 attempts. 0 100-yard games, and only 4 total touchdowns. I mean, how do you explain that? Like, beyond, obviously, we know the team itself and offensive line. We can talk about all that stuff, but how that significant of a decrease in production in terms of what he was putting up with the Steelers, like how can you explain that?
I put a lot of it on the scheme. I think Adam Gase's scheme is not really fit for what Le'Veon Bell is trying to do. He continuously, when he would give Le'Veon carries, it was just in the A gap on 2nd and 10, and it was okay. You got 2 yards, and now it's 3rd and 8, and you're in a tough situation there. Last year, it was a mix. The offensive line was, bottom 3 in football probably, and Le'Veon really had his struggles, and again, I sound like a broken record here, but a lot of it I think is put on the coach and Adam Gase. And just the lack of creativity. They never lined him up in the slot, almost rarely, which Pittsburgh, they did that a ton, and it worked wonders. He's a great receiving back, and they really didn't give him the appropriate number of targets a game. It's really mind-boggling when you look at the talent that he has and just how he was used here. It's unbelievable. And, Jets fans are pissed off today. They're not happy because they know that, this guy is talented. He's going to probably go to a contender now on the cheap, and he'll be good there. He'll be able to put up production, maybe not to the exact level that he did in Pittsburgh, but he'll be more than productive. And we know what the reason's going to be. It's going to be because of the head coach calling the plays.
Matt, you brought up Adam Gase, of course, head coach of the Jets. Of course, there's been speculation of him getting rid of. It's week 6 coming up. What's happening with him so far? What have you heard? What have people been telling you with Adam Gase and his stance with the Jets?
Yeah, it really looks like he's going to be the head coach through the remainder of the year, which the Johnson family, who owns the Jets, they don't like to make head coaching changes in the middle of the year. They almost never do that. And while they look like the absolute worst team in football, and the offense certainly had their flaws last year, they're unwilling to make a change right now, which I personally believe, and a lot of other Jets fans and pundits believe that it's a mistake to continue to run him out there for the next 11 games and continue to ruin their young quarterback, which is exactly what's happening. Sam Darnold isn't progressing. He's getting worse and regressing. And, it's tough, but they're going to run this thing into the ground. And they're probably going to be looking at a top 3 pick, probably number 1 overall.
Matt, to that point, you just mentioned the draft and top 3 overall picks, but really what I want to know from your perspective is, what is Joe Douglas's plan? Like, I remember Joe Douglas as a scout, actually with the Ravens in the early 2000s, and then moving on to Philly, where, he was director of player personnel, if I'm not mistaken, for that championship team with Nick Foles. And just looking at the talent roster and everything that they put together, like the overall level of talent from just an individual player perspective on that Philly team was great. And in my opinion, you're looking at a team now that has the least amount of talent perspective wise across the league. What's the plan here? Like, where do you go from here?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think his plan is just to start from the ground up. He was brought in after Adam Gase, and when they moved on from Mike McCagnon, who was the GM before him, it was already after the draft. It was already after free agency. So this past draft was his first draft class as a GM. This past free agency was his first free agency. And his moves in free agency were not so much of going all in. It was more so like, these are stopgap guys that I'm bringing here to evaluate what this roster is. I truly believe he wanted to use this year as an evaluation year, and then everything just fell out from underneath him. The defense regressed. Adam Gase just continued to struggle, and the quarterback did not get any better. Part of that's on Darnold. Part of that's also on the coaching or lack thereof. I think really his plan is to build this thing through the draft. I think that's what he's best at. We haven't seen a ton out of this draft class yet because you have some injuries, but overall, I think he's going to continue to try to acquire picks and build this thing up through the draft.
Matt, you mentioned about trying to build this from the bottom up. The question is, Trevor Lawrence comes into mind. If you guys get into that top 3 range, is Sam Darnold the man, or do you think Trevor Lawrence will be a consideration for the Jets?
I think if they have the number 1 overall pick, the selection is going to be Trevor Lawrence. I don't think he's someone that you can pass on. I really liked Sam Darnold a lot. I want it to work out here. I just think the surrounding talent isn't there. The coaching's not there. This is a team that's maybe going to have 0, 1, 2 wins this year. And if that's the case, I don't see them picking outside the top 3. And if you have the number 1 overall pick, like I said, Trevor Lawrence is going to be the pick, and they'll start this thing over. Now, I think he could have success elsewhere. I think there is a lot of talent there. I just think the Jets did an absolute awful job of making his life easier. They didn't get him a great head coach. And I mean, if you look at everyone else from that 2018 draft class, except for maybe Josh Rosen, who's bounced around, they've all been put in positions to succeed. Like Lamar Jackson, they did a ton to build around him. Josh Allen, the Bills have done tremendous work to build around him. And even Baker Mayfield, he had talent going in there, and then they go out and trade for Odell Beckham Jr. They made his life extremely easy, where the Jets have done the exact opposite for Sam Darnold.
Matt, you talked about not wanting to fire. The ownership group doesn't want to fire a head coach in the middle of the season. Obviously, I think everybody knows that there's going to be a change there. Tell me a little bit about who you're thinking might want that job, right? Because it's going to have to be somebody that's willing to take on a lot of different issues that are going on across the team, from special teams, offense, defense, etc. So tell me a little bit about who you think might, be of interest for that job. And also on the flip side, who the Jets, who would they target?
Yeah. I think if they have the number 1 overall pick, that makes it a little bit more intriguing. You get the opportunity to work with, potential generational talent like Trevor Lawrence. And this team does have a lot of draft assets over the next couple of years with the Jamal Adams trade and stuff like that. So I think that could be a little bit of an appeal. It is a tough sell because you look at like Houston's going to need a coach. Obviously, working with Deshaun Watson, a team that has a ton of talent, is going to be a nice spot. The Falcons have a ton of talent. So maybe the Jets aren't the number one choice on everyone's list, but I think there's really a lot of coordinators who I like. Eric Bieniemy is a name that comes up a lot. He's the offensive coordinator of the Chiefs. The Andy Reid coaching tree is usually a good one, so he's someone I'd be interested in. Brian Dable, the offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills, has done a great job.
Very familiar with him.
Absolutely. And I think Arthur Smith, the Titans OC, has done a great job this year as well, with Ryan Tannehill salvaging his career after he escaped from Adam Gase. And I really I know he's young, but Joe Brady, I think, is going to be a coach in this league very soon. I'm a huge Matt Rule guy, and Matt Rule, brought him in, and that offense has looked really good. So I think those are some hot coordinators who are going to be in the market. And, if not one of those guys, maybe they go the college route and see if they could pry someone from there.
Nick, how about Lincoln Riley?
Oh, I mean, we talked about this before, but I don't think he's going anywhere.
I don't think so.
Unless it's in Texas and Dallas. That's the only way.
Agree.
Interesting caveat. Let's look at the running backs. Who will be RB1 now, Matt?
It's going to be Frank Gore. He's like a million years old, but they're going to continue to give him the ball. That's what they were doing when Le'Veon Bell was out. It's going to be heavy Frank Gore, which Gase loves Gore. And then they drafted LaMichael Pirine out of Florida this past year in the draft. So he's going to be the second running back, and he'll spell Gore when need be. And hopefully, I'm not counting on it, but hopefully they, down the stretch, give Pirine a little bit more of the action and, see if you have anything there long-term with him.
Matt, a guy that I wanted to ask you about, very familiar with, Quinnen Williams. I want to know what your thoughts are about his development. From my standpoint, Alabama graduate, I got to watch him play a couple of times live, and he really came out of nowhere as a redshirt sophomore, busted onto the scene of the national stage in the 2018 season, and then goes top 3. I want to see what your thoughts are on his production so far, what his ceiling is. What are your thoughts on his tenure with the team long term?
Yeah, I think he's had a really inconsistent start with the Jets. He's been good in the run game, but I think he's been more so inconsistent as a pass rusher, which he was pretty good at Alabama doing that. Honestly, like, you have guys like John Franklin Myers, who they found off a practice squad, who's just as productive, if not more productive right now than Quinnen Williams. I think his ceiling is obviously higher than that. As a top 3 pick, like, talent is obviously there. A lot of people were talking about him being, one of, if not the most talented guy in that draft class. Just hasn't transitioned at the NFL level yet. I think he's a fine starting caliber, on the interior defensive line, but he hasn't done anything to make you go, oh, okay, like, I see why he was a top 3 pick. He's been fine, but I'm hoping he becomes more than just an average to okay starter.
Matt, Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback right now. Do you think he could turn things around, or do you don't have much faith in him?
Not really. I think he's just kind of holding down the fort until Sam gets back. And he was okay this past week against the Cardinals. He didn't do anything awful. He didn't put up great numbers. He just, honestly, it's the limitations of the talent around him and who's calling the plays. And it's going to be a lot of short stuff. It's going to be a lot of running with Frank Gore up the middle. It's boring football, but that's the way that it's going to be this week. And I don't expect it to be, a fun game against the Dolphins on Sunday.
Matt, something I've always wanted to ask a Jets fan. I just don't know that many, so really excited to talk to you about this one. I love the rumor mills. I know there was a rumor going on last summer, and then I think back in the spring of a guy like Todd McShay joining the front office for the Jets. I know he was college buddies with Joe Douglas. Is that somebody that you would be okay with as a potentially like head scout or somebody, involved in the front office in some way?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that, to be honest with. If Joe Douglas, values him as someone who could be, an asset to this team. I know I sound really down on Adam Gase, which I am, but I do have faith in Joe Douglas. I think he, comes from two organizations in the Eagles and the Ravens that have had a bunch of success in recent years. So I think that the talent as a GM prospect is there. So if he sees something in McShay that he's interested in, then I'm all for bringing him on. I think that'd be an intriguing guy to add to the mix.
Cool.
Matt, 0-4 Jets. How many wins do you think the Jets will get this season?
Maybe one or two. I don't really look at this schedule. It's tough. Like their most winnable game was against Denver, and they lost by 9 points or something like that on Thursday Night Football. Maybe the Dolphins this week, but they just beat the 49ers up pretty good, who demolished the Jets. So I mean, it's not an easy schedule that the Jets have. So it's going to be tough unless someone just no shows. We'll see what happens, but I don't expect it to be very many wins this year.
All right, Matt, last one here that I just wanted to kind of pick your brain on is what's the pulse of the fan base? What are their thoughts about the organization, about where it's headed, and the changes that need to be made?
Yeah, the Jets fans are not happy, and for good reason. They've had a really bad product to watch for a long time now. The last time they made the playoffs was 2010. Nobody likes the head coach. Pretty much everyone did not like the hire to begin with, and they could have predicted that it was going to go down this route. Everyone's upset, and it really starts from the top with ownership. If you have bad ownership, it's very tough to have success. And for whatever reason, the owners seem to like Adam Gase. I think he's going to finish out the year. I'm hoping he gets fired. I think I would say it's about a 90% chance he's gone, but there's a little 10% chance that they don't want to admit their mistake just yet, and he'll somehow get his way into having another quarterback and putting the blame on Darnold here. But, Jets fans are rightfully upset. And right now, I think everyone's hoping for the tank, and maybe you draft Trevor Lawrence and get lucky and have some success.
Matt, you brought up a little bit about the ownership. What are the chances for a new owner to own the Jets, like a Gary Vaynerchuk?
I love Gary V. I would love if he would own the Jets. I don't know if he has the money just yet, or I don't know if the Johnsons are looking to sell. They've been in ownership for about 20 years now, if I'm not mistaken. It's really tough to see if they're going to make a change, if they're looking to sell. Right now they have, they're making pretty good money off the Jets, so I don't know if they're going to be looking to move just yet.
Well, there you have it, New York Jets with Matt O'Leary. Of course, we'll be eyeing the whole developments. Two coaches were fired this season so far, right, Nick? It was Quinn from Atlanta and another one, right?
Houston,
yeah, O'Brien.
Which technically fired their GM too, and so did Atlanta.
Yeah, so we could see something in the Jets, but what it sounds from Matt, the ownership does not like to fire a coach this season, but seeing what the other two teams, they could be encouraged to do that. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I really hope so. I think that's what everyone's rooting for here, in New York. I don't know if that's what the owners think, though, which is my concern.
Well, anyways, let's switch over to college football. Late breaking news about less than 20 minutes ago. Nick Saban has COVID-19. This Saturday, Alabama plays Georgia, a big game. Not very favorable for Georgia. They're up +6 in Vegas. Nick, tell us about the news, and will that affect big time for Saturday?
Yeah, obviously it's really big news. It wasn't just Nick Saban as well. It was also Greg Byrne, the athletic director, also tested positive. That was reported by Cecil Hurt from the Tuscaloosa News. My initial reaction just overall is how are they going to play this game on Saturday without Nick Saban, right? Like, I'm sure, obviously, I guess another coach could come in and coach the team. We were talking before the show. My initial guess would be Steve Sarkisian. He has head coaching experience, obviously, with Washington and USC. But with this big announcement, this is a big splash, and this is kind of built up here over the last couple of days. I don't know if you've kept track with Florida having a problem. Also,
which their
Ole
game
Miss
got suspended this Saturday as well,
right,
Florida and
right,
LSU, which postponed until December. So
tentatively as well. And Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin came out here today and said that they're having issues as well. Not sure if that's what this came from. This stemmed from last Saturday's game in Oxford. But SEC on rocky footing, I would say right now.
How much? I mean, if Georgia doesn't have any issues, if they're all healthy, and Alabama without Nick Saban, will that affect the game entirely?
How could it not, right? Like, how could it not? I know he's not playing, but it's the psychological effect, I think, on the players that it would have a dramatic effect at the very least. I know the spread's at 5 points, 5.5 maybe. I saw right
6
now
last night, but it could have changed since then. But
yeah. So obviously this was going to be, or at least Vegas thinks it was going to be a close game anyway. Throwing this type of wrinkle in, I really don't know. Like I said, my initial reaction is I don't know how they're going to play, to be honest.
Could the SEC cancel a game because of a coach, or do you think it has to be players, like 19 players get in?
Right. I don't know. Right. Like, and who knows too, like if Saban was tested, right, and he tested positive and he's been around the players, then now you've got this streamline effect of like, okay, well now we got to test all the players and now we can't practice, or at least practice the way that we want. So I really don't know how all of that stems into a game that's going to happen in 3 days.
Yeah, and plus like the whole incubation period. Sometimes I guess when a player gets it, you don't really see the result like 2 or 3 days after. And I know we're getting all scientific, guys. Sorry about that, health-wise. But yeah, there is an incubation period. I don't know what the SEC protocols are. I'm not sure what's the NCAA. I know the NFL has it where if pretty much if one coach or a player or staff gets infected, the whole facility is closed. That's not the same thing for college, isn't it?
I don't think so. I really don't think so. Because just based on my initial reactions to when those guidelines were put out, the NFL was always a little bit more lenient, just based on the whole return to play for college. Specifically, I know the SEC, they were always kind of in the forefront of wanting to play, and they were going to play no matter what. But this is a real test here. I mean, we're in some rocky waters right now. And I hope that Greg Sankey and the rest of the league can figure out a way to make this work.
And we'll definitely keep you guys up to date by visiting thesportscast.net. Another Alabama news, another coach that became nationwide headlines in the past couple of days is a defensive coordinator of Alabama, Pete Golding, a unknown figure to me until this week. Issues with the defense this past game against Ole Miss. Twitter was going through firing Pete Golding. He makes $3,000 a day, things like that. Nick, I'm sure you're not a fan of him, but what are your thoughts over Pete Golding? And do you think the conversation of him being let go is brought up already?
Yeah, so I want to take a step back first, and I want to go back to when Jeremy Pruitt took the Tennessee job. Because obviously you had Kirby Smart, who was a longtime defensive coordinator for Alabama. He leaves, he goes to Georgia, and Jeremy Pruitt comes in, and it's a seamless transition. And you could even say that Pruitt was somewhat of an upgrade over Kirby. But after that tenure of Jeremy Pruitt, Saban, in my opinion, took a risk. And he actually hired a guy named Taj Lupoy. And Taj Lupoy was a really good recruiter, defensive line coach, I think at the time, maybe middle linebacker or outside linebacker, something like that. But young, unexperienced, but was kind of like this next generation, guy that Saban maybe saw a lot of potential in. So he went young, really what I mean by that, with his defensive coordinator choice. That lasted all of 1 year. And in that year, that was the 2018 year where we went undefeated and then lost to Clemson in the national championship. Something just felt off about the defense. Giving up explosive plays, bad on run defense. Like, it was just not the Alabama defense that we're all so used to, and also used to being, the run stopping, big hitting. You might complete a couple of passes, but you're not averaging more than 3 yards a carry on us. Like, that's just not going to happen. And so Taj Lupoy transitions out of that role. I think he's with the Browns now. At least I know that's where he went after. And then instead of going back to somebody who's a little bit more established, he hires Pete Golding. And Pete Golding came from a smaller program, UTSA, UT San Antonio. or UT El Paso, one of those smaller Texas FCS schools. Same situation. The up and comer, the young, maybe a cool hire, and it really just has not worked out. If anything, it's gotten worse. And last year, I really wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt because number one, it was his first year on the job, and number two, without Dylan Moses, that's like losing your starting quarterback, right? Like on defense, when you lose a guy like Dylan Moses, the guy that is the signal caller on defense, like it's really hard. And not to mention a couple of other injuries that we had on the defense side. So I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. But from what I've seen these first 3 games, just the fundamentals like tackling, guys being so out of position, lack of effort, like just some things that I can't even believe I'm saying it. It makes me sick. And really it's, I mean, you can only point fingers at so many players to the point where it's really their development, right? And it really doesn't matter how many stars you have at the front of your name when you sign your letter of intent, but it's how you develop throughout the system. And the system's broken. And it was broken last year. And what really bothers me is what Pete Golding said during his press conference earlier this year before fall camp, saying, commenting about what some of the issues are about last year, lack of discipline, tackling, making the defense a lot, easier to understand. And you're seeing the exact same problems. And yet you just spent all offseason trying to solve it, or you say you did. So I really think it's time for, I think this experiment needs to be over, but I understand that Saban doesn't fire guys. People need to understand that. Saban does not fire guys. He will find you another role and put in a good recommendation and find you somewhere else to go. And then he'll bring somebody else in. Like the only guy he's ever fired since I've been from my last knowledge is Lane Kiffin. And think about that, like just how monumentous that was 11 days before a national championship game. So he doesn't fire guys. So I don't see a transition happening during the season. I think Saban has really made up his mind twofold. One, this isn't getting fixed, and this is who we are, and we'll worry about this in the offseason. Or two, we'll make a change. And like I said, I think he's leaning more towards this is just who we are this year.
Definitely a situation to look at. One name that's been brought up these past 2 days, Coach Charlie Strong. He's a defensive analyst for Alabama. Used to coach for USF. That name's been lingering around in Twitter and also in from other sportscast contributors. Nick, what do you know about him? Would he be a right transition to, or what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so, very familiar with Coach Strong, starting with the defensive coordinator at Florida during the Urban Meyer years. Very, very successful. A lot of draft picks that were really well known, and obviously a defense that was filled with stars and won a couple of national championships. So then he goes to where I'm based now, Austin, Texas. The sky's the limit in terms of the expectation, and he just does not meet that expectation whatsoever. I think he was 1-4 against Oklahoma. Bad defense, not struggling offense, couldn't win the Big 12. So ultimately they, as I think they're about to do here again, they fire their head coach. They fire Charlie Strong, and he goes and takes a smaller school head coaching job with USF. What scares me the most from that transition is going from the competition that he was playing in the Big 12 to, I believe they're in the American Conference, USF.
I'll double check on that. Might be Sun Belt, but I could be totally wrong.
Sun Belt, American Conference, a smaller Power Five, or, a group of five, I should say, conference.
The American Athletic Conference. The
American Athletic Conference. Oh, gotcha. So same struggles though, right? Lack of defensive identity, offense struggles. He even got a former Bama commit, Blake Barnett, as his quarterback down there, and they still couldn't win. So, I hesitate to say that this is our savior in waiting in line. I know a lot of Bama fans see what happened with Steve Sarkisian and they see the fruits of that labor going on right now. And they say, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly how it'll work with Charlie Strong. I would pump the brakes on that. The guy's hasn't been a defensive specific coordinator in a while. He's only been a defensive analyst now for less than 6 months or 8 months, whatever. We hired him back in early January. So I don't know if that's an easy fix. I really don't.
We'll definitely be eyeing the situation with the defense. Nick gave us great insight of how Nick Saban's hiring and letting go practices are. So it's going to be a slow one. It won't be abrupt. Especially now that Nick has COVID, so things might slow. MVP Golden has that one more chance to change thoughts against Georgia, especially. Speaking about COVID, which we'll switch back to Matt. There's been talks about having a bubble during the NFL playoffs. Of course, there's been scheduling changes for the past 2-3 weeks. Matt, what are your thoughts about that? Having a bubble for the playoffs instead of playing at each of the teams' stadiums.
Yeah, if it's something that's feasible, I'm all for it. I think limiting the opportunity for players to get exposed is really what the NFL should be doing. Yeah, they probably can't do it like how the NHL or NBA just did it. They might have to get a little creative with, maybe each team just stays in their own hotels and then they travel on a private plane and that limits their exposure. But I think that they're going to have to make some sort of a change for the playoffs because right now we're seeing too many cancellations.
Yeah, so far the Patriots and the Titans have had like the biggest issues. Nick, what's your thoughts about having a NFL bubble for the playoffs?
If you would figure that out, I think it's a great idea. Look just primarily at, and this is something that you can talk about too, Matt, with the Islanders is the NHL and the NBA bubbles. Look how successful those models were. I'm not 100% sure about the NBA, but I know the NHL had 0 positive tests throughout that entire bubble. So I think that it's a great idea, but the real problem with some of those is the logistics, right? Like, where are you going to do it? How are you going to house it? And trying to figure all of that out. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I'd be all for it if they could, lay out a game plan for something like that.
Have one location for the AFC and one location for the NFC. So definitely be interesting. I think I'm kind of with Nick. I think they should, but we'll see how the rest of the couple of weeks go on. Because I know our fantasy, Nick, is kind of messing us up. I mean, I'm 3-2 now. I mean, I should be 5-0, but it happens. NHL, which you brought up. How did the Islanders do during the NHL draft?
They didn't have too many draft picks after trading for JG Pajot. Their first pick wasn't until the 3rd round. So the draft wasn't a huge thing for the Islanders this year. Maybe you get a couple of developmental guys in the later rounds that you're looking for. But, once Lou Lamoriello traded away the 1st and 2nd round pick in order to go out and get JG Pajot and extend him to stay here, you pretty much knew the draft was not going to be a huge thing for at least 2020.
Matt, let me ask you, is Barzal going to be an Islander long-term?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think they're going to have an offer sheet situation. I really don't. With everything going on with COVID and the flat cap, I don't expect a lot of teams to be putting offer sheets out there. I know the Islanders cap situation isn't great right now. They just traded away Devon Tays and got some picks back, and I think they're going to attach one of those picks and clear up Johnny Boychuk's $6 million cap hit, and then eventually, I think the plan is sign Pulock, sign Barzal, and maybe if you have a little bit extra space, spend on a forward or something like that. But I don't have anything to worry about with Matt Barzal. I think he's going to sign here long term.
Speaking of cap, is Andrew Ladd still on the books?
Yep.
Man, that is unreal. I feel like that deal was signed. Like, what did he sign? A 7-8 year deal?
He signed for 7 years in 2016. So he's got 3 left at 5.
And not to interrupt, cut you off there. Sorry. I was reading into a couple of, again, rumor mills about maybe a Andrew Ladd for Zach Parise, straight up deal for deal. Is that something that, you would entertain?
As of right now, I would say it's probably unlikely. It was talked about at the trade deadline, but the Islanders would have had to attach a pick and a prospect with that, and to take on that cap number, I think at this point would be a little difficult unless they clear even more cap space out. But I don't think Andrew Ladd's going to move. I think they're just going to have to bury his contract in the AHL, and that's really the only way I think they could survive that one.
And to that point as well, I'm going to be honest, as a Capitals fan, I was surprised at how successful Barry has been up there. I thought that was a purely for the money move, but I mean, him and Lamoriello have done really, really well. But the one guy that I think has really helped support the organization is a guy named Mitch Korn. I'm not super familiar if he's still, as hands-on as he was when he was with us, but what a goalie coach that guy is.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Mitch Korn, he kind of oversees the technical goalie coach is Piero Greco, who is with Lou Lamoriello in Toronto. But Mitch Korn did a tremendous job with Semyon Varlamov and Thomas Greiss this year. Last year, he had Robin Lehner and Thomas Greiss, and they both put up, phenomenal numbers. Robin Lehner was in the Vezina conversation. And now this year, it's going to be Varlamov and Ila Sorokin. Everyone's excited about the kid from Russia, and I think, everyone's hoping that he's going to be the guy long term. So we'll see what he can do once he gets his hands on him.
I believe Nick talked about him a few days ago.
Oh, that was the Nashville guy. That was the guy that Nashville took here in this and 4th overall this last in 2020's draft. But Matt, speaking of return to play, I know there's been a lot of talk about January 1st. How are you feeling about this next season? Is it going to go as smooth? Like what this really reminds me of is the 2013 lockout. When they started January 1st, I believe, or the first week in January, and played 32 games, I think. Still got the playoffs in. So, tell me a little bit about your thoughts about a January 1st start date, and if you think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best estimate for when they're going to get things started back up again. I know initially they were trying to get it in December, but I just think that's unrealistic. And, they're probably going to play a shortened season again. I don't think that they could, push this thing to a full season and then try to get it back on track. I just don't see how that's possible. So I think, unfortunately, we're going to see, a shortened season. Maybe it's like 40 games ish, somewhere in that mark, about half a year, and then go into the playoffs. And, from there, I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed the NHL playoffs this year with the expanded playoffs. I thought it was interesting, and I think it was a big hit for the NHL. So maybe they can get lucky and have some success again with that.
Yeah, I agree. And to that point, like you just said, I think that obviously the league took a big hit financially, and they're going to be recovering from that for a while now until that new US TV deal comes up. And that's going to affect a lot of things from a free agency and draft perspective. But I'm hoping that we can get some type of, I read an article the other day about them maybe doing a game on Lake Louise up in Alberta to start the season. I thought that would be really cool because we'd obviously miss out on a Winter Classic or some Stadium Series games. So hopefully, all goes well with that, and we don't have any more obviously labor disputes or anything with the new deal signed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the next hurdle they have to get over. But if everything goes smoothly and according to plan, then hopefully, they get this thing back on track and start making some money again.
Yep.
Anything else in hockey before we head into a little bit of baseball?
Nothing. Yeah, a lot of forwards still on the books, Matt. Something that I know with the free agency market that I wanted to just highlight is goalies went quick. D-men went quick. Pitcher Angelo goes to Vegas. Torrey Krug goes to St. Louis. And really the surprise in my mind is the Taylor Hall signing. That I still am trying to figure that one out. But a lot of guys like Granlund, I know the forward from the Panthers still unsigned. So forward market's still pretty open with a lot of guys unsigned.
Yeah, agree. Absolutely. I think, Mike Hoffman being out there still is a little surprising. And, eventually the dominoes are going to begin to fall. But I think, teams are struggling to figure out their own cap situation first before they worry about signing UFAs. So I think it's going to take some time.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too. A lot of players that did sign, with expansion coming and the flat cap, still looking to kind of navigate their deals for either a lot of upfront signing bonus, or buyout protection later on in their contracts. I thought that was really interesting with what pitcher Angelo did. So, I think it's going to be a really interesting next year and a half with Seattle coming in as well.
Absolutely.
Well, there you have it. That's our NHL segment of the Sportscast. It's been a while that I talk about hockey, but it's good to bring this up. Any predictions for baseball? You think it'll be the Rays and the Braves?
I think so. I really do. I think the Rays have been playing really good baseball this year, and after beating the Yankees, I think that they're a team on a mission, and the Braves lineup is just really good. I think that they're going to have enough to get over the Dodgers. The Dodgers seem to choke every year anyway, so I really think we're going to look at the Braves and the Rays in the World Series.
How about you, Nick?
I agree. I think that it's really interesting to see the Rays back into, going into the World Series since 2010, I think, was the last time they made that pretty cool, magical run. And same thing with the Braves too, right? Like they've been known as the, can't get over the hump. Can't win a playoff series since the early 90s with Glavine and Maddox and all those boys. So I think it's a really interesting matchup.
Should be exciting. Things are formulating in baseball. NBA got the Lakers as champions, so sports is in full swing. And of course, we're into the football part of the year. Anyways, anything else, Nick, before we head into the random question of the day?
Let me ask you guys this. How crazy would it be that we play this Bama-Georgia game on Saturday evening and Steve Sarkisian leads the team out there as the head coach and wins? What is the ripple effect from that? I mean, not just from the Bama perspective, but from a SEC, teams that might be looking for a new head coach. Like, I mean, Steve Sarkisian was already getting looked at from Mississippi State, but this past offseason, but I think that guy pretty much cements himself as the number one candidate to get hired across all of college football, if that so is the case of what happens.
I would think that will definitely prove that the Nick Saban system works without him.
Right.
And of course, Nick Saban will keep these coaches prepared, and obviously the players will probably play harder, maybe, play for the coach. So there'll be a lot of emotions, of course, and playing against Georgia. So they did, which is very, very difficult to beat, but we'll have motivation to do so. So I believe like the emotions will be high. Hopefully no other Alabama player or have no Alabama player being positive for COVID. How about you, Matt?
I was just thinking about this too. Oh, sorry to interrupt, but
no, okay.
I mean, they let Hugh Freeze coach from a hospital bed. Like, just put Nick Saban up in the press box by himself and let him coach from up there. Like, I promise you, when he yells at you, you'd still hear him. So, like, I'd be fine with something like that.
How about you, Nick? Matt, what are your thoughts about not having your head coach in the sidelines?
Yeah, that's obviously going to be really difficult if that's what ends up happening for Alabama here. It's something that they're going to have to get used to for at least this week, and we'll see how long he's in quarantine for. Hopefully he, recovers quickly and gets back out there coaching his team.
We'll definitely be eyeing out. Of course, news will be changing throughout the day, throughout the week. So we'll see what the SEC says, what Alabama says. But our prayers will be for Nick Saban. Hopefully he'll get through this process smoothly. Hopefully he doesn't get as much symptoms as the other situation when you get COVID. So we'll definitely keep that an eye. Of course, you can follow us on the Sportscast one on Twitter or the website, thesportscast.net. Random question of the day, and it's in our Twitter poll. What is your favorite dessert? The options are cake, ice cream, pie, or brownies. We'll go with Matt. He's our guest today. What is your favorite dessert from these options?
Great question. I think I'm going to go ice cream. I can't go wrong with some ice cream on a hot summer day.
That's a top one. Nick Rossetti.
Easy one for
the dessert?
Easy one for me as well. I'm going brownies, but specifically the cosmic brownies. That's my hands down favorite. If I was on death row, that's what I would request to eat.
What is that type of brownie? Is that Cosmic Brownie, you said?
Yeah, Cosmic Brownie. Like it's a brand, I think, but it has like I don't even know how to describe it, but it's a type of brand. Yeah, it's amazing.
Would say something else, but I can't because this is a PG show. But anyways, ice cream is winning, Matt. They're on your side, 46%. Pie and cake is tied for 23, and the brownies came in last at 7%. Nick, sorry about that.
America, you guys don't know. You try a Cosmic Brownie and put this back up in a week. I promise you, it flips the other way.
Now, will you put brownies in the cake category, or the two separate things?
I feel like that's a hot dog, a sandwich question. You know what I mean? So I brownie is a category for me. I'm down with that.
I agree. And Matt has it. Would you have brownies with ice cream?
Oh, absolutely. You could do a little vanilla scoop on top, of course.
Nick will have some whipped cream and a cherry on top as well.
Yeah.
With some hot fudge. Anyways, Matt, tell us about the best way to reach you and tell us about your YouTube channel and your podcast.
Absolutely. So on YouTube at Matt O'Leary NY, and that's where I am on social media, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. I do Jets content over there. And on the YouTube channel, we do a podcast once a week, every Wednesday. It's a call-in show where we answer questions. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. So if you're into the Jets, definitely check it out over on YouTube, Matt O'Leary NY.
Nick, how fast would the news get to you once Adam Gase gets fired? No, sorry. Matt, not Nick. Sorry.
I am extremely excited to hear that. So hopefully very quickly.
Okay, yeah, because I feels like someone from the Jets. Well, hey, Matt, this is what's going to happen in a few minutes.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Okay. Nick, what is the best way to reach you to talk to you about the latest on Alabama and their game this Saturday?
Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter at _Rossetti. That's 2 S's and 2 T's. Don't wear it out. And then you can also find me on Instagram. My DMs are always open at _Rossetti77. Those are the best ways to reach me.
Yes. Follow Nick's feed. He's definitely all sports, all Alabama. And of course, his Instagram is pretty good. And he goes to Mexico in October at times. So definitely check that out.
Before the hurricane.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, you can reach us at the Sportscast1 on Twitter or at thesportscast.net, our website. You can listen to us on radio. Go download our app, the Sportscast. And before we go, Nick, what is your prediction for this Saturday? Give us a score for Georgia and Alabama.
I almost want to put an asterisk next to this one, but I'm going to go 37-24 Bama rolls.
Okay, and let me pull up who the Jets play this weekend. I'm sure Matt knows it right now. They're playing the Dolphins. Who do you think is going to win in that game?
I'm taking the Dolphins 27-13.
And Nick?
Depends on if they put number 1 in, but I will. I'm going to go Dolphins 27, Jets 10.
This will be a good time to put 2 in.
You can't put them in when they're winning, right? You can't put them in when they're winning. I almost wish the Jets drafted them.
Yeah, and of course, last week Nick was referencing how the Dolphins beat the 49ers by a lot. So, and Fitzpatrick is on fire. So definitely, you don't want to extinguish that. You want him.
People forget that Mahomes sat for 15 out of 16 games. Like people forget that.
Correct.
So I would prefer it. I would prefer that same trajectory for my Hawaiian friend. So I'm fine with him sitting as long as he needs.
I'm with you, Nick. Totally. I say till at least December at the earliest, but I prefer him just have a solid rest year, shirt season. But anyways, we'll find out more about this weekend. Sports continues. COVID ain't stopping everything, but we'll see what happens. Nick and Matt, thanks for coming on to the Sportscast.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you.